We all make plans. We create budgets, we make investments, we try our best to predict what's coming next. But what if the very tools we're using to see the future are actually broken? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden traps in forecasting that can lead to, pretty disastrous results.
It's the big question, isn't it? It haunts every investor, every project manager, really anyone trying to plan ahead. We build these super detailed plans, these sophisticated models, and yet time and time again, our predictions are just off, sometimes spectacularly off. So why is that? Well, the answer lies in a few cognitive traps, these little blind spots in our thinking that we all fall into without even realizing it.
Stanford professor Sam Savage actually has a name for this whole mess. He calls it the flaw of averages trilogy. It's the core reason why so many big projects end up costing way more than we thought, delivering way less, and taking forever to finish. And as he points out, this isn't just a string of bad luck, it's a fundamental flaw in how we think. It's like we've got bad math baked right into our planning process from the start.
Okay, let's start with the biggest, most fundamental trap of them all, the flaw of averages. I promise you, once you understand this concept, you will never, ever look at a forecast the same way again.
So here's the core idea. When we're faced with a big, uncertain future, our brains just crave simplicity. It's totally natural. So what do? We take a super complex reality with a huge range of possible outcomes and we boil it all down to one single number, the average. We plan for it, we budget for it, we expect it. But here's the catch. The average outcome almost never actually happens. And this tiny little mistake, this shortcut, can lead to catastrophic results.
This visual just lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got the messy, complicated truth of some project or investment. You can see this wide range of possibilities, from big losses all the way to huge wins. And then on the right, that's the oversimplified version we all use in our plans. Just one neat little bar, the average. We literally take that rich, complex picture of reality and we just pretend it's this one single misleading number. And when we do that, we're throwing away all the crucial information about risk, about opportunity, about the full range of what could happen, all for the false comfort of a single data point. This might be the best and maybe the most memorable analogy for the flaw of averages ever. Think about it. A guy staggering across a busy highway isn't safe just because his average position happens to be the center line, right? He's constantly veering into oncoming traffic on both sides. If you plan for his average position, you're missing the point entirely. You have to look at the full range of his movements to see the real danger. The average doesn't save him. In fact, the average state of the drunk is dead.
All right, now for trap number 2. This is a phrase you've probably heard 1,000 times, but you might not fully appreciate just how dangerous it is, especially in the world of finance. The key thing to get here is that correlation shows you what is happening. It shows you two things are moving in a similar pattern, but it tells you absolutely nothing about why they're doing it. It might look like a deep, meaningful relationship, but it could be driven by some hidden third factor. Or it could just be a complete random coincidence.
And just to see how wild these can get, check out these real-world examples. For a while, the S&P 500's performance moved in almost perfect lockstep with butter production in Bangladesh. And yes, it's a real statistic that the number of Nicolas Cage movies released in a year was correlated with the number of people who drowned in swimming pools. These are real patterns in the data, but they are completely and utterly meaningless.
Now, while those examples are kind of funny, the consequences of this trap in the world of finance are anything but. In investing, correlations can seem super plausible, really logical, and they can lead us to build entire portfolios and risk models based on patterns that might not hold up when we need them the most.
And here's a perfect real-world example of that trap in action. For decades, investors lived by the gospel of the negative correlation between stocks and bonds. You know the rule. When stocks go down, bonds go up, and vice versa. But that wasn't a law of physics. It was just a relationship that happened to exist under very specific economic conditions. Then, in 2022, an inflation shock came along and completely changed the game. That trusted relationship completely broke down, and millions of investors who thought they were diversified suddenly found themselves totally exposed.
So we have these two incredibly powerful traps, the flaw of averages and confusing correlation with causation. What happens when these two mistakes combine? Well, you get a perfect storm. You get a recipe for absolute disaster. And I'm not being dramatic here. The 2008 global financial crisis was, in large part, the result of incredibly sophisticated mathematical models that fell headfirst into both of these fundamental traps at the exact same time.
Okay, so here's the simplified playbook for how it all went down. First, banks bundled thousands of super risky mortgages together. To figure out how risky these bundles were, they used a fancy model called the Gaussian copula. But this model had a fatal flaw. It relied on a single number, an average correlation, to predict how thousands of different mortgages would behave. It confused a temporary correlation that only existed in a rising housing market for some kind of permanent law. So what happened? The market turned, that flimsy correlation completely shattered, mortgages started defaulting all at once, the model blew up, and it took the entire global financial system down with it.
So yeah, we've seen how dangerous these traps are. But here's the good news. There is a better way. The solution isn't about finding a more accurate average. The solution is to stop thinking in terms of averages altogether and to start thinking in terms of possibilities. So if depending on a single forecast number is such a trap, what's the alternative? I mean, how are we supposed to plan for a future that is, by its very nature, so uncertain?
The alternative is to actually embrace that uncertainty instead of trying to ignore it. Instead of just focusing on that one single average path, we need to use tools that let us see the entire landscape of potential outcomes, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And this right here is what that looks like in practice. This is a Monte Carlo simulation. Each one of those colorful lines represents one possible future, based on a set of probabilities. So instead of one single forecast, we get this rich, beautiful picture of thousands of potential futures. This lets us see the true range of risk and, more importantly, opportunity.
You know, the difference in mindset here is just night and day. The old way gives you a single, brittle forecast. It gives you this false sense of certainty while completely ignoring the real risks. The new way, though, it gives you a robust map of the future. It lets you actually see the real risks, find those hidden opportunities, and ultimately make far, far better decisions. And that really brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. Take a hard look at your own plans, your investments, your business, that big project you're working on. Are they built on an average? And if they are, what possibilities, what risks, and what amazing opportunities might you be missing?